morning, everybody. Jennifer Keesmaat joins us now. She's the Chief Planner for the City of Toronto. Welcome back.
It's great to be here.
Good to see you. So, Global News has been running a three-part series on the situation with the Gardiner Expressway. Jackson Prosco has been literally going through thousands of documents talking about the kind of shape it's in, what's been ignored along the way, and now that conversation is starting. I know that there have been conversations at City Hall about it, but as the Chief Planner, is there a plan for the Gardiner Expressway right now?
Well, to say there's a plan would be a little bit of a stretch, but we were in the process of an environmental assessment, which is a provincially mandated process whenever you're planning a large infrastructure project. So, for example, for the Eglinton LRT, an environmental assessment was required to understand what the options are and what the best way is to proceed. So, same thing with the Gardiner Expressway. We were in the process of an environmental assessment, and the majority of council supported that environmental assessment. And then I guess it was about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago that environmental assessment was actually pushed to the side. So the planning stopped, and that was not a planning decision. It was a political decision. It was a political decision.
Right.
Jennifer, you can't use the words quick fix whenever you talk about this kind of situation, can you? I mean, we're talking like a decade kind of down the road.
Oh, yeah. Well, and when you're talking about major infrastructure, particularly transportation infrastructure, like even thinking about a new subway line, you can have the idea, consult about the idea, agree on the idea, and then you begin all the technical analysis. And you're still a decade away from before you get any kind of machinery into the ground.
And that's if it tracks straight and the politicians don't derail it at some stage.
But the point is, we don't have a decade. We just don't. It's falling apart.
You bet. We don't have a decade. Well, and the catch-22 here is that there's been a significant amount of debate over a very long period of time about whether it should go up or go down. So the challenge is, do you throw good money after bad? If you're taking it down, then you don't put a lot of money into the infrastructure. And that's what the environmental assessment was about. That planning study was really about figuring out what the options are and what ought to happen. And what was unique about that study was that it was a international design competition was an important part of that process. And it was blending together some of the really important city building questions. So, for example, if you take it down, how do you bury it? Do you create a great street, which would, have a transportation impact, but from a city building, urban planning perspective, you could knit together the urban fabric in a way that it's been torn apart.
On the job now?
Let's see. I'm on, day 69, I think.
Right,
it is today.
you're new.
But who's counting?
Are you surprised, walking into this job in a city of this size, that this is something that hasn't been looked at prior to your arrival?
Well, I'm not, in part because there has been a really significant debate around the Gardiner, and that debate has cooled over the past year and a half or so. But planning a big city like this is complex. Like, it's challenging and it's difficult. And the debate we're having about the Gardiner, this debate has happened the world over on the same kinds of infrastructure problems. The challenge is it should never have been built in the first place. Now that we have it, what do we do with it?
But don't you think it gets complicated because it becomes so political? As you were saying,
yeah, you take the politics out.
Well, yeah, there are political decisions and there are right decisions. In your opinion, if politics aside, what do you think the right decision is when it comes to dealing with the Gardiner Expressway?
Well, first of all, I never view things through the lens of politics aside, because politics are never aside, and that's a really important part of a democracy.
To be able to do that and at least sort of have that vision that we can work towards.
Hey, that's every planner's fantasy, that we can just go out and execute our ideas.
So what is that vision, do you think?
Well, the study was cut short. The study was initiated. The study was about looking at both options, taking it down, and also, well, actually not just both, there's many options, including how do you kind of knit the existing infrastructure into the urban fabric, and there's merits to doing that as well. So I would love to say that I have a strong opinion on what should have happened,
Do you
but
look
that
to
would
other
preempt the
cities?
analysis.
Didn't Boston just go through about a decade of construction working on, I think it was Boston.
Boston sure did,
yeah.
and it was called the Big Dig, and we're talking billions and billions of dollars in terms of the price tag. You know, the challenge here is that in some ways, sometimes when a decision is delayed, it's not a bad thing, in part because we know transportation planning right now. We're in a moment where we're going through a significant shift. We're thinking about movement in cities in a fundamentally different way. In the London Times 2 weeks ago, there was an article about peak car, essentially arguing that we were moving out of an era of planning for cars and moving into an era of planning for pedestrians. So, you know, I'm fully confident that the Gardiner piece is going to resolve itself, and that I'm hoping there's going to be some leadership on that, and I think there absolutely is a role for our division to play in that.
Well, what if something happens? What if that punch through? What if that actually happens and somebody gets hurt? Because that's what we're finding in the reports, right?
Yeah, well, you know, that I can't get into that because that's really the question for the engineers to resolve, and I trust the due diligence of the city engineers and that they are responsible in how they're managing this. I do trust that. I don't want to sensationalize what's happening because I know that there's a insanely competent group of people that are making decisions about how to manage the infrastructure right now.
Jennifer, do you feel like your hands are tied?
We've just got about 30 seconds.
Well, I would love to. I'd love to see the EA continue, so that I can answer your question. But you know, we were bringing some of the best minds in the world to the table to think through what the best decision would be, and it's a complex question because of the transportation volumes, but also because of the money involved. And I think that due diligence needs to continue.
Jennifer Keesmaat, thank you so much. The Chief Planner for the City of Toronto. Great to see you.